but they conceal it. Have my name in the paper.
Actually enjoy treating your customers like a piece of shit, because that's how I felt when I went to the Alamo Draft House. Okay? You know what? I didn't know that I wasn't supposed to text in your little crappy-ass theater. It was too f***ing dark in that place for me to find my seat, alright? I was using my phone as a flashlight to get to my f***ing seat. So excuse me for using my phone in USA, United States of America, where you are free to text in a theater. I was not aware that I couldn't text in your theater, all right? I've texted in all the other theaters in Austin, and no one ever gave a fuck about what I was doing on my fucking phone, all right? And it was on silent. It wasn't on loud. It wasn't bothering anybody. You guys obviously were being assholes to me. And I'm sure that's what you do, you know, to rip people off. You take my money, and then you throw me out. You know, I will never be coming back to your Alamo Draft House or whatever. I'd rather go to a regular theater where people are actually polite. And, you know, I'm going to tell everyone about how you are. And I'm pretty sure you guys are being on purpose. So thanks for making me feel like a customer. Thanks for taking my money.
It's chocolate. You should be very proud, Detective.
Shut up!
You've made a delicious life for yourself.
Said shut the fudge up! What?
You don't come near here. You stay away from here.
Here he comes.
What?
Are you listening, David? I was saying how much I admire you and your ice creams. You have incredible taste in fine ice creams.
What the fudge did you just say?
6 delicious flavors. They're so lovely. And once they're gone, David, they're gone.
David, step away from the prisoner. Step away, David. Step away.
What's in the box?
I'm not gonna tell you until
What's in the box? What's in the box?
We each have our weaknesses. And it appears that gluttony is my sin of choice. And you add the mystery. I couldn't resist.
What's in the malted fudging box?
It's empty, David. It's empty.
No! It was full. 6 delicious flavors. Only available this month.
I know. It was delivered to your home. It was delectable.
Do you think anybody's gonna get, like, offended by this?
Just tall white Karens.
Monotony. It comes in all shapes and sizes. Dull, tedious, just plain boring. But what is this? A contender, perhaps? something unboring by the looks of it. Jabs right at Dull, an uppercut to tedium, something that keeps you on your toes, keeps your head on a swivel, a knockout punch to your old, boring workouts. Welcome to Fight Camp.
The Greening the Gateway Cities program provides trees that are planted by DCR foresters and crews hired from local communities. When you sign up as a potential tree recipient, a forester will visit your home or business to determine the best location and species of tree for maximum energy efficiency. Easy care instructions are provided, and it's all free. Find out if you are in the zone and learn more at maurbancanopy.org.
If we're honest, who wants to roll less travel? It's harder to teach us. Who wants the difficult route?
If you support safety in our schools, you will support the National Guard to come in here and keep our students safe.
People say, these students have changed. These students are lazy.
Your children aren't learning disability, they lazy.
Get students engaged so they don't want to skip class, so they want to be in their classrooms.
There are teachers in this profession who should not be teachers. There are teachers in this profession who don't care about children.
These students don't want to learn. No, the adults have changed. See, the parents don't have the back of the teachers.
He ain't slow. He ain't got no learning problem. His parents didn't give him a foundation.
Young people, as a nation, we sorely need the depth and breadth of your intelligence, character, and also your clarity.
Think about, in particular, the history of people that look like me who are getting cheated.
So if you're asking me right now as an educator, what's wrong with these kids? There's nothing wrong with them.
Teachers are the most important people in the world.
They're whimpering in fear, and we're sitting here scared of them.
Because if they get it right, they'll change the world because they're in charge of the most important resource, and that's our children.
Shaolin shadow boxing and the Wu-Tang sword style. If what you say is true, the Shaolin and the Wu-Tang could be dangerous. Do you think your Wu-Tang sword can defeat me?
On guard. I'll let you try my Wu-Tang style.
Same with you. Same with you.
I met you, there was peace unknown. I set out to get you with a fine-tooth comb. I was soft inside. There was something going on.
Oscar Mike Radio is a proud podcast partner of Reach Across America Radio, heard every Thursday at 11 a.m. and Sunday at 8 a.m. Eastern. They're also big supporters of the nonprofit I Got Your Six, Two Lives at Once. And with every wreath you sponsor through Oscar Mike Radio, $5 goes back to this great organization dedicated to making a difference in the lives of veterans, law enforcement, firefighters, and first responders battling PTSD. Two Lives at Once pairs these brave men and women together with dogs rescued from kill shelters. In this way, two lives are saved at the same time by saving each other. Donate now. Go to reachacrossamerica.org/Oscar Mike Radio to help. That's reachacrossamerica.org/Oscar Mike Radio.
Master Yoda I am. And listen you must to hulazoom.com.
Members of the class of 2025 from down the street, across the country, and around the world. Around the world, just as it should be.
Can you dig it? Can you dig it?
Yeah.
Can you dig it?
You like some motherfucking action heroes in it. Yeah.
This is destiny. This is madness. This is the proof.
Step into the twisted mind of my literature, designed to get into the depths of your mind, administer sickness around to mimic the likes of snuff cinema. What you must get into, you're nothing but pups. Remember you Homer and Happy Simpson, son. Nothing Ithaca. Stalkers like the northern half of Korea's peninsula. ESP your island like the booth, something sinister. ESP your island like the booth, something sinister. ESP your island like the booth, something sinister.
Last time he came right in. We're actually live. Hey guys, it's your boy Sinister1 broadcasting live from the City of Champions. You are watching The Booth. It is First Tuesdays. Kenneth Diesenhof, Robert Resnick of The Corridor are on with me as it is on First Tuesday. We're just waiting for Mr. Ken Diesenhof's arrival. Hopefully everything's okay with him. Let me get into my sponsors real quick. Michael Douglas Barretto, MDB Electronics. If you need your controller fixed, get it out to him. Get back to gaming. Also, Vianna Marie's music is everywhere. 494,000 streams. Her last project is personal. The newest project coming out is called Blacklisted. And then Tactical Target Systems. I actually changed the range that I go to now that's closer to the house. I'm now a member of the Holbrook Sportsman's Club. Versus, I was used to be going to Boston, but Boston was really tough to park at. And It's a smaller place. It's kind of out of the way now that we're not under COVID no more. So, I changed my membership to Holbrook. So I had to do my fulfillments to become a member. I had to do these 3 different tasks, and now I have to do so many hours to become tactical target systems. If you see me at the range, those are the targets that you see me with. I love BostonSports.com. Please hang out in the chat. Give a mention. You might win a shirt. And then Kimberly Ann, Empowerment Photography. Ladies, if you want to take some pictures that you never thought you would take, reach out to Kimberly Ann, Empowerment Photography. Also, Underwatch Protective Services, really expanding, buying new vehicles and stuff. I got to get this guy on the show, Daryl Smith. Mobile Patrol, Foot Patrol, Armed Guards, Unarmed Guards, Event Security, Private Security, Underwatch Protective Services. Yeah, I got to get him on the show. Also, call Larry for handyman services. That's a good buddy of mine that I reach out to him. He comes around and does some handyman around your house. 766-6549. And as we get into the news booth and await the arrival of Ken, who I was looking for his information, but Rob can do a good job handling this. This is something we really talked about on this show. As you guys know, a couple of months ago, there was a shooting at the Urban Air here in Brockton. 2 young people were killed, a 15-year-old boy and an 18-year-old girl. The story was that the kid that shot the 2 of them was the boyfriend of the girl outside of Urban Air. His name is Davinci Leonard. Davinci Leonard has yet to be caught. He's 22 years old. And one of the things we stressed about on this show was to turn him in. Turn him in. If you don't turn him in and you know his whereabouts, people, you are going to end up like the gentleman who was in court this week in Brockton from Quincy. He resides in Quincy. He's being brought up on these murder charges now because he housed Davinci Leonard in his house the night of the shooting. After he did the shooting, he allowed him to stay in his house. And look, I see a lot of people who are friends of this guy, and they're pissed, and they're saying he's the scapegoat, blah, blah, blah. It's not conspiracy, people. We've been talking about this on this show. You harbor a fugitive who's known for murder, you are going to be part of that murder charge. He has been held without bail, denied bail, and I'm going to let the lawyer here, R-Squared, he's an attorney, he knows his stuff. I'm going to let him just kind of break this down real quick for everybody. This is why you need to turn people in. You're not doing anybody any service by being their boy or keeping your street cred. Go ahead, R.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think most people remember this. We talked about it. I think our show just happened to be right after it occurred, so it was fresh in everybody's mind. And, it was just yet another senseless, heinous act of violence, just stupid, right? I mean, if you have a dispute, figure it out. But anyway, we talked about that. And when you have a case like that, law enforcement is under tremendous pressure to solve it, and the system is under tremendous pressure to punish the person. So there's no surprise here that they were going after, Davinci. And so, this particular incident is if you know somebody or have reason to believe that somebody committed a crime, you can't harbor them, right? I mean, law enforcement and certain members of society have specific duties that they can be held responsible for. Your average citizen, everybody who walks the street, doesn't have a specific duty, but once you insert yourself, once you assist somebody in either committing a crime or covering up for the crime, and hiding somebody after they committed a crime is covering it up, that's called accessory. And so if you know or reasonably should know that an individual committed a crime and you help them hide or you help them conceal evidence or help them do something, it doesn't matter that you weren't part of the crime. It's a separate crime called accessory. In this case, accessory to murder, because he's going to be charged with murder. And so the person who hid him in his home, knowing that Davinci Leonard was wanted for murder, doesn't matter whether you believe he did it or not. If you know that he's wanted by law enforcement, and he was, and the person who housed him, as I understand it, knew that, then you committed a very serious violation. And, he's entitled to a trial. He's entitled to counsel and everything else. I don't know what his defense is going to be. The only defense he could have to the charge of accessory would be that he did not know and reasonably should not have known that Davinci Leonard was wanted for that crime. I don't know. The publicity was all over the place, and they knew each other. So, it's possible. And if he really had no knowledge, then he might, escape. But it doesn't look good.
And if Ken was on, Ken the defense attorney. And sometimes what the stupid stuff is these people are posting on social media with like no care in the world, like nobody's watching. And that's the other part. These people do these stupid things, and yeah, he's my boy, and they're trying to say this. It's crazy that people don't realize that the stuff you say on social media can also be used against you in court of law, people. We're seeing this right now in the Karen Reed trial, which
was just going to say that.
Yeah, I'm staying away from this whole, because everybody's crazy over this Karen Reed trial. I talk about a lot of stuff, and I talk about stuff I know about, but if there's one debate out there, two debates out there that I am staying away from on this show, and that is the Karen Reed trial and the Diddy trial, because there's just too much out there that everybody's going back and forth on. I agree that the cops did a crappy investigation, but there is just so much. And I see there's some loyal people out there on this Karen Reed thing. I drive through Quincy, and I see people standing outside dressed up in like Karen Reed cosplay. It's insane. Have you been following this? As far as, does it kind of intrigue you being someone involved with law in this case?
I'm watching the trial. I'm curious, especially because of the way the first trial ended and some of the problems. I was very interested to see how the prosecution would make adjustments, because if you remember on the show, I said that while, and I'm not an expert, I don't have any information the rest of us don't have, I think she's most likely guilty of either manslaughter or murder. I was skeptical, though, of retrying her because of all the problems that existed. Those don't go away magically. So I will say that I think the prosecution is doing a better job presenting the case. So they have a chance. There's always a chance. But the defense also had a chance to practice in the first trial. And obviously they got a better result in the first trial. And they seem to be doing a decent job now. And the prosecution has to prove every element of every offense beyond a reasonable doubt. That's a lofty standard, and it's supposed to be. So, my money's on the defense, because all they have to do is win one thing. The prosecution has to win all of them. So, it just came out, what was yesterday's summary, so the prosecution didn't call Michael Proctor this time because he obviously got destroyed on cross-examination with some of his text messages and inappropriate behavior. But the defense got a lot of that through, the people who received his text messages. So that all came out again. So, it doesn't matter what I think happened. As a practitioner, I think the defense has the better shot at winning here. It doesn't mean she didn't do anything wrong. It just means I think the burden is going to be insurmountable for the prosecution.
Yeah, like I said, I appreciate you coming on here and giving updates, because I know absolutely nothing about it. I see people going back and forth tooth and nail on social media, and I'm like, I'm staying out of this one. It's just all over the place. There's so much stuff there. And it's crazy. It is crazy stuff. Ken had spoke on this being a defense attorney, so he's had his ear to the grind on this one, because there's a lot of discussion that it was a pretty quick year that this went by, because we were just talking about this whole case being a mistrial, and then here we are a year later, we're already into this. So it's kind of crazy how fast this flew. But yeah, she's she had done the rounds. She was making a little bit of money on doing some interviews, but then they kind of cut that out as they headed into this, because I guess they didn't want to taint possible jurors in the juror selection. I mean, pretty much everybody in this area knows about it. The question I do have for you that did pop up to me. So her defense actually, this was weird. I found this little bit of information out from Hot 96.9. The defense actually hired a person who was a juror in the first trial. Is that something that's common in big cases such as this?
No. Jurors, look, I will tell you, as a practitioner, when I was doing cases, one of the first things I did when a trial was over was reach out to the jurors and say, listen, within the limits of what the judge instructed you, I would love to get your feedback on what you thought about the case. What did you find effective, about our performance, about the evidence on both sides? And I would share the information with both sides. It wasn't for one side or the other. I would take the names of the jurors off and just share the substance of their remarks, because it's very helpful as a practitioner. We all get locked in on whatever side we're on. We start to believe our witnesses, our theory of the case. Even though we do a professional job, you're going with it with a specific point of view. That's your job. And sometimes we lose track of what an average member of the public might think about that evidence or that witness. We might think we have a great witness. The jury may think the witness is not credible. We may think we have a really powerful piece of evidence. The jury may have questions about it. You just don't know. And so it's very helpful. Now, I think it's very rare that people would go out and hire a juror. Now, we also don't have that many mistrials where you have a retrial, of a case like this. So I can understand why they might do that. Obviously, anybody who sat on the jury in the first trial can't sit on it again. So it's not like there's any conflict there. The judge will have given them instructions about what they're allowed to share. And that means they can't talk about the deliberations, but they are allowed to talk about how they perceived the presentation of the case by either side. So I think, that might be helpful. You might remember that, there's that show Bull that I make fun of on the show sometimes about the jury consultant, I never liked that show. I watched it sometimes. I'm not a fan of Michael Weatherly. And I thought the show was over the top, but it is interesting because that's a real thing, not Jason Bull per se, but people on the prosecution or the defense do hire jury consultants, people to help figure out what would be the ideal juror in this particular case, by demographic, by career, by whatever, all the things you could learn about a juror. What type of people would you want? And once you get that jury, what type of arguments, what type of evidence would be effective to those people? So there is big money to be made. I don't know that there's a pure science to it. To me, and Ken would agree with this, he said it too on the show. To me, jury selection is an art form, not really a science. So yeah, there is a science in the sense of there are some things we learn to do, but it's an art form. And there's no guarantee, no matter who you put on that jury, how they're going to play out, because it's about your case and everybody else. So, it's an interesting thing that they've done that. It's not very common, nor should it be.
Good stuff. Thank you. Hello, Andrea. Hello, Margaret. Hello, Viana Marie. All you guys are all in the chat. Listen along. We're awaiting the arrival of Ken Diesel, so we're just going to keep moving along. Oh, there is a question.
He's in traffic.
He's in traffic, he said?
We think he's in traffic.
Oh, okay. Viana Marie says that wouldn't be considered a conflict of interest using a prior juror. That's what I had thought. That's what I thought it was, but I guess it's common in some cases.
That's why, like I just laid out, the judge gives them instructions about things they can't share. Like they may not talk about the deliberations. They can't talk about what the jurors said in the deliberation room or anything that goes on back there. But a juror is free to discuss with the counsel on either side their perceptions of the case. What evidence they thought was good or not good, performance of counsel, things like that. So counsel will make use of it.
Nice. That's good to know. Good lessons there. Also in the Brockton News booth, this one hits home. To my heart. Meat King, which is located right down the street. Everybody has that favorite Chinese food spot that they grew up with, that they get their orders from. I remember Meat King when they first opened. The owner, when he first opened Meat King, I was 17 years old. I worked at Alert gas station, which was 2 blocks away. Before Meat King owner, the owner of Meat King would come and give free food to everybody who worked in that area. He would come and bring me moo moo gai pan with chicken fingers and fried rice. That's what I liked back then. He would bring me a plate every day for free and a menu. And he would say, hey, here's a stack of menus as people come in to get gas. Let them know I'm opening up this gas station. And he gave me lunch every day or dinner every day. And I really appreciated it. And that's where I started to have my fondness and my love for Meat King. They have just announced that they are now closing their Brockton location. They're going to keep the Bridgewater location, but they're closing it. But the reason why I'm mentioning this is a bigger story than people realize. I read a very interesting story in regards to Chinese food restaurants as a whole across the country closing. And what it is that a lot of these Chinese food businesses that have been in these areas, they wanted better for their kids. They didn't want their kids to have to work hard and have to own a restaurant. So a lot of these establishments, they put their kids in colleges and things of that sort so they don't have to run the business. The issue that we're having now, you have a business like Me King that was here for many, many years in Brockton. A lot of your Chinese, authentic Chinese food cooks are all older. They're retiring, they're dying. And I read the story that they were saying that Chinese food restaurants, as we know it, are going to come into this place where we're not going to see them as much as we see them. And it's kind of a dying thing. That's what they said. This Chinese restaurants enjoy it because this is a dying thing. You're going to see more of these chain Chinese restaurants, but it's not going to be like your authentic places. Do you have a place, Rob, that you had when you were in Florida that you was just religiously loyal to?
No, I mean, I grew up eating Chinese food on a fairly regular basis, and I absolutely love it. There's such a variety. You can eat it all the time and not repeat the same dishes, if you go to a real place. And there's a place near me here that I find is pretty good. We all have those favorite things by which we judge a Chinese restaurant, if you like the egg rolls, the fried rice, the kung pao, whatever. But they all make something well, and they make some things that aren't up to your standard because there's different tastes. I will say this. Lately, and this is not just about this area, it's in various places that I've lived, the quality of Chinese food, I think to your point, has gone down. It's just not flavorful. Somebody's following a fast food recipe and it's just not the same. And so when I can find a restaurant that still, serves the type of food that I like with the same flavorings, I'm loyal for life, because I just think it's the greatest thing. But too many restaurants just, they don't make the simple stuff good. So it's,
And it's funny, you talk about this, I work near the airport in East Boston, and there is a place called Grand Chef, and they have a menu, the cheap lunch menu. So what I try to do is I'll try something new. And about 2 weeks ago, I tried something new off the Chinese menu that I've never saw and never had before, is chow foon. Chow foon is a noodle, but
noodles.
It's a wide noodle with dude, I had never had it before, and I had it, and Rob, I'll tell you, I was like, where has this been all my life? I've never had chow foon before. It was so good. I ordered it a second time for lunch, and the guy's like, oh, you really like this, huh? And I'm like, I've never had it before. I'm usually a chicken finger, lo mein guy, but there was something about the chow foon that I had, and I got the crushed peanuts on. Oh man, good stuff, man. Good stuff. If you guys haven't had chow foon yet, it's a super wide noodle. It's like a stroganoff noodle. So it's super good. You've had it before?
Yeah, it's not one of my normal dishes, but I've tried it and I do like it.
Oh man, it's good stuff. Good stuff. So again, we're waiting Ken to come in also in the news booth. For those who didn't know, Eversource just put out an announcement. This is a big deal. The section of 123 from Brockton West Side going into the Eastern Line just before Stonehill College, the gas lines are about to start being replaced. This project is going to take us all the way into summer of 2026. The work will start at 8 in the morning and continue till 4:30. For those who know that area of Stonehill College on 123 heading towards 24, that is a busy route. So you may want to start looking for alternate routes and avoiding that area, because that's going to drop down to one lane. That's a 4-lane road right now when you come off of 24. So that's going to be an area to kind of avoid or reroute. There's a map there. Please check it out. The city website does a good job of updating people with stuff. I see people complaining about the city, but the city does send out text messages and stuff about traffic. Let's get into the entertainment booth. I hope Ken's okay. In the entertainment booth, rest in peace. Last week was George Wendt from Cheers, who played Norm. And then this week at 87, we have someone who was on. George Wendt did a couple of episodes on MASH with this woman, Loretta Swit, who was, and it's funny because back in the day, I just thought of her as Hot Lips Houlihan, But then when you get older and you hear the nickname Hot Lips, you now say, wait a minute, was this a double entendre back then in the 70s? You know, and the funny thing is that, you know, she took that role over from Sally Kellerman, who played that character in the movie. It translated to TV, they swapped out Sally Kellerman, and a lot of people were kind of unhappy that they brought this new person, Loretta Swit, in this Broadway, and she ended up kind of making a name for herself. There were some stories I read about Loretta Swit behind the scenes that I didn't know about. I guess for 2 seasons, they tried to get her to change her name to a more Hollywood name. They felt Loretta Swit wasn't this Hollywood name, and she fought them. She fought the producers. She fought people in Hollywood on keeping her real name. That was her Broadway name. She was very proud of her name. She lived a long life. She was very active in animal activist, big part of animal activists. So Loretta Swit, 87 years old, long life. Probably one of the great, we talked about great casts, great ensembles of comedies. I would say the MASH cast is probably in the top 10 for comedy ensembles for sitcoms. I don't know if you agree with that, Rob.
Absolutely. Classic show.
Yeah. Classic show. Being a guy from the military, how do you look at MASH? Is there some things that you kind of can relate to, you know, that you can see and things of that sort?
I mean, look, it was pure comedy, and that was its intent. It's not, it doesn't portray. Now, obviously, there are episodes where they portray something that's real, you know, somebody with PTS, you know, some, you know, where they're just inundated with wounded and, you know, performing surgery. And there are some things that can be real, but the show itself, the characters itself, you know, completely over the top. And that's fine. That's what it's intended to be. I loved watching it. You know, that was before I served, but even still, I would watch it. I think it's funny.
Yeah, it's one of those timeless classics that you can't change. We don't get shows like that anymore. You know, everything's about putting it out and getting it to syndication, and then that's it. We've made our money.
I would like to see what Pete Hegseth would do with Klinger. That's all.
Jamie Farr, I love it. And again, ahead of its time. The discussion is way ahead of its time. That is just a great point there for you guys who are watching. Adrian Reyes, thank you for coming into the chat. Let me just check, make sure he's not sitting out here. Also, in the entertainment booth, let me just show this clip for you guys real quick. This is the trailer for the brand new Dexter that is appearing on Paramount Plus. And I have to show you this trailer because look at this cast. So this season of Dexter, as you guys know, Dexter we thought was dead. Dexter is now resurrected. He didn't die. He wakes up in the hotel room and he's brought to this group of serial killers now. Now he's being brought into this group of serial killers. Look at this, look at this cast that they have set up for this group of serial killers that Dexter's going to join. Here we go, Paramount Plus, Dexter Resurrection.
Only in New York. Somebody once told me, you have to go through hell to achieve resurrection. Hallelujah.
Dexter, it's like seeing a ghost. Chief Bishop told me that you were alive. She said that you were the Bay Harbor butcher.
So much for the happy reunion. What better place to hide?
It's the greatest city in the world.
Where nobody knows who you really are. Tell me more about your friends.
Prater likes to own things. Time to meet the man of the manor.
Welcome. I cannot express how excited I am to meet you. You really like serial killers.
I pride myself on finding the best of the best in every field.
Let's show and tell, baby.
So there are others. On their way. Only in New York. Tonight's the night.
Invitation delivered.
This is the dark path you're going down.
I heard you to be careful, son. I'm tired of being careful. What do you think?
I'm back in the New York groove.
All right, we're back here in the booth broadcasting live. That was the trailer for Dexter Resurrection. Crazy cast. Uma Thurman, Peter Dinklage. It's just a crazy cast that they've picked out to be this group of serial killers that Dexter is going to join. It just, I'm looking at Emmy already. No Emmy nods for that. So, getting into the sports booth. In the sports booth, me and Rob were kind of talking about this off air. Breaking news today: New York Knicks have fired Coach Tom Thibodeau, and I'm not happy with this. I feel like the NBA. This started years ago with the Knicks when they brought in Jeremy Lin, and I forget who it was, the player that came back, and he got the coach fired, and the coach wanted to keep Jeremy Lin. Lin was on fire, and this player came in, and then the player ended up and I feel like this LeBron era, players run the team, coaches don't run the team. And my feeling is that if your coach gets you to the playoffs, that's a success to me. You shouldn't fire a coach if you get to the playoffs. It makes you hungry for the next season. Okay, we got to the playoffs this year. Let's get, you know what I'm saying? And I don't agree with this. It's a tough one for me. It's like everyone wants instant gratification, and that's the problem with this generation. Everybody wants instant gratification now. You don't get the whole thing, people aren't happy. Tom Thibodeau has been fired. They beat the Celtics, for Christ's sake. Granted, Jason Tatum got hurt. They still completed the task. They've made it to the playoffs. They got past the Celtics. Yet you still fire Tom Thibodeau for losing to Indiana, which I hate to say this, was a better team on paper. Indiana was a better team on paper. I don't agree with it. Your thoughts on this? I know we talked about it off it, but we're gonna.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you said about Tom Thibodeau and generally, but I also think that if you look at the last couple of years, I think the feeling of the Knicks organization, and this is speculation on my part, obviously, I don't work for them. Nobody wants my opinion on basketball, but and you certainly don't want me playing on your team. But I think that they felt that he had a ceiling, that he couldn't get past where he was, and they needed somebody who can get the team past the ceiling. And what I mean by that is, last year obviously they got back to the playoffs, which was exciting for Knicks fans. Playing against the Celtics last year was great, and of course, the Celtics wiped the floor with them and then went on to beat Indiana. This year, the Knicks struggled because they looked like a good team, but they couldn't beat any of the top tier teams. They were like the best second tier team, but they lost every game to the Celtics and other top tier teams throughout the regular season. And so you have to wonder, why is that? Why couldn't they win any of those games? And so maybe it's coaching. Maybe that's a ceiling that Thibodeau had. And then you look at the playoffs, they almost blew it to Detroit. Now, Detroit was on fire at the end of the season. I totally recognize that. And anything can happen in the playoffs. But the Knicks struggled. And then they went up against the Celtics. And I said, I think I said it on the show, but maybe I said it to you privately. Before the Knicks-Celtics series started, I said, whoever wins doesn't matter because the Pacers are going to the finals this year. They were unstoppable. So I don't blame Thibodeau for the Knicks losing to the Pacers. But I will say this. The Knicks had an up and down series with the Celtics, those huge deficits and then having to come back like that every game. You don't do that every game. And look at the way the Knicks lost game 1 to the Pacers. Where's the accountability for that? That was ridiculous, that loss, and it cost them the series perhaps. I do think the Pacers were going to win no matter what. I think they were better than the Celtics or the Knicks this year, or at least they wanted it more anyway. And so I'm not surprised. But if the Knicks had won game 1, that could have been a very different series. And they should have won game 1. They had a huge lead with 2 minutes to go, for goodness sake. So maybe, two things. They need one more big player, and maybe they needed a coaching change. I don't know. I don't know what's happening in the locker room. I don't know what's happening in the front office. I don't know. It's just they're missing something.
Yeah, it's a tough one. You know, like I said, I just, this instant gratification, I think, kind of plays into it. You know, the fans, it's just a sad state of affairs, in my opinion. Also, let's see. Last topic in the sports booth. I know Rob's a Giants fan, and I know he doesn't really follow video games or anything of that sort, but I know Rob's got to be kind of smiling a little bit. He's got to know a little bit of this news. As you guys all know, Madden, EA Sports is the big game. It comes out every year. Well, this year's cover athlete for Madden 26 is none other than running back Philadelphia Eagles, Saquon Barkley. Now, if you are a Jedi Eagles fan, you felt a disturbance in the Eagles force like Obi-Wan did when Alderaan was blown away. Why? Because there is this thing called the Madden curse. When you're named to that cover, almost every player, and Rob's changed his background so we can see his Lawrence Taylor. He's already getting ready. There's this thing about the Madden curse, and there's actually been one player, maybe two players who have beat that curse, so-called curse. Tom Brady is one of them, but pretty much everybody has gotten hurt that's been named to this cover. So Eagles fans were cringing at the fact that Saquon Barkley has been named the EA Sports Madden 26 cover athlete. He actually celebrated today by going down to Geno's, which is a famous cheesesteak spot in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And they changed the name of the place to Saquon's for the day, which is kind of nice. They changed the signage and stuff. So, you know, he's getting his whole thing out of it. And he's also, his overall is a 99. So if you're like me, a gamer, you understand what this 99 overall is in Madden. It's hard to get the 99. One of the hardest things he had to do is he had to recreate the backwards hurdle for the cover. So they had to get that right and put that in the game. So that was great to see. So big ups to Saquon Barkley. Congratulations. But again, like I said, Rob is smiling a little bit because if Saquon Barkley falls to the curse, the Madden curse, the Giants could have some wins this year. So we'll see. And as we talked to Rob, last time Rob was on, we talked, he was pretty happy with the draft and how things progressed. Have you guys had any big changes in this offseason, the free agency period, since after the draft?
Before the draft, but I haven't really heard too much since then. I think they're gelling what they have, maybe a couple of minor pickups to fill in some holes, but I think they're pretty happy with where they're at.
Yeah, and the only biggest news that has happened in the NFL since the draft is the fact that they had their owners' meetings and their owner votes, and the tush push is going to remain for another year. Everybody was saying they wanted it gone, but when push came to shove, pardon the pun, but they voted it back. It's voted back in. The tush push is in. And like I said to a few other guys, I'm like, hey, get your defense in the leg room. That's all the tush push is. It's the stronger line against the stronger line. If your old line is pushing that tush push, guess what? They're beating your guys on leg day. That's all it is. So your defense, if you know you got the Eagles on the schedule this year, like the Giants are going to have them, leg day. You got to defeat that tush push because that's all it is. That's just strength. That's just leg strength. And you got to learn to beat that. So I'm happy to see. But let's get into, here we go. And Ken's not here. Damn it. But R-Squared can pick it up. We're going to get into the legal booth. And we're going to come out with a topic that I actually held over from last week because I wanted to speak with Rob about this. Last time I was on the show 2 weeks ago, I talked about Trump and the DOJ settling with the family of Ashli Babbitt for $5 million. And this was kind of caused by the fact that Trump pardoned the January 6th. And once he pardoned the January 6th insurrectionists, the criminals, he created this ripple effect. And when he created this ripple effect by pardoning those insurrectionists, he actually pardoned dead Ashli Babbitt, whose family, because the Biden family was not going to pay that family at all. They were not paying the Babbitts. That case was going to die. She was a criminal. Yeah, she was a veteran, but she was a criminal. She stormed the White House. She didn't listen to the proper instructions to get away from the door. She got shot and she lost her life, and she should have knew better being a veteran. Now, unfortunately, because President Trump pardoned all these insurrectionists, they had to settle. They had to settle now. Settle with the husband for $5 million. And R Squared is a veteran, and I'm going to let you speak on it.
First, let me just clarify something. Whether he pardoned the January 6th rioters or not, this is entirely separate.
Okay, you don't think that played into it? You think they were going to settle?
He was going to do it anyway. He even talked about it during the campaign.
Oh, damn. Okay.
Yeah. Look, you said it right. Ashli Babbitt is a criminal. Ashli Babbitt disgraced the uniform she wore. She disgraced being a member of the military because of what she did that day. And I don't care why. I don't care what the lead up was. If you wear the uniform, then you owe an oath to the Constitution and the lawful operation of our government and the lawful transfer of power. And she violated all of those things. And I will tell you that, it's not like anybody on the inside of the House floor was looking for a firefight. They wanted the people to go away. And she tried to break through that door. She put herself first and front to go in, and she got herself shot. And legally, that was a lawful shooting. That was a lawful shooting. All of those people who broke into the Capitol could have been shot. I'm not saying they all should have been, but they all legally could have been. And I have been critical on this show and other places of the lack of a proper response by the Capitol Police. Now, what happened to them was disgusting. The rioters, the violence against Capitol Police and National Guard and everybody else, that was disgusting. But they were told not to defend the Capitol. I mean, they were put in that position by their leadership that told them not to use deadly force, even though deadly force was legally authorized. And so I'm sure there's a lot of complications in that decision. I'm sure the decision was made by the Trump administration because they were the ones in charge. And there you go. Their people were storming the Capitol. Of course, they don't want deadly force to be used. I've heard arguments that it would have escalated. I don't see how it would have escalated. But, the bottom line is this. Ashli Babbitt committed an extreme act of violence. She was given the opportunity to stand down, and she didn't. And they were going to defend that House chamber with deadly force, and damn right they did. And it's disgusting that our taxpayer dollars goes to her estate, that her family gets money, basically through her estate. That is disgusting. Every taxpayer should be offended by that.
Yeah, I wasn't happy at all because I feel like you also make her a martyr for this whole narrative, and that bugged the crap out of me also. So speaking on this one, R Squared's going to have to take the lead on this one. I went ahead and we haven't gotten into this topic. So this is something that's been pissing me off. Ken is an immigration attorney, and Ken and I have been doing this show for close to 20 years. So when it comes to this topic of immigration and discussion, me and Ken have really talked about it. We've talked about the fact that the system is antiquated. We've talked about the fact that it's understaffed. We've been talking about it's understaffed for the last 5 presidents, for Christ's sake. We've been talking about the fact that, the progress is so slow. They need to speed it up. And there are things here that have happened that the Trump administration has turned into this crazed fiasco. So now we have this student here in Milford, the teenager, 18-year-old teenager, heading to volleyball practice. ICE stops him, snatches him up, and they turn around, and at first they said, okay, we made a mistake. And then they turn around and Todd Lyons, who is now the head of ICE underneath Holman, he says, well, we really didn't make a mistake. We were trying to get his father, but it wasn't his father. We decided to snatch him up because his visa was expired, blah, blah, blah. So here's the thing, though, people. You've been watching the show and following the show. Part of the reason why people haven't been able to follow up on their visas and things of that sort is because, one, as we said, the system has been backlogged for ages. It's slow. It's understaffed. Now, COVID hit. COVID put this whole system that was already backlogged, and as Ken would tell you, being in the court systems. When COVID hit, it backed everything up for 2 years. And when they came out of COVID, thankfully things like marijuana was legalized, so it took a lot of things off the dockets. But there was still, this immigration thing was backlogged like no tomorrow. People were not able to get visas renewed in time because of this caseload. The Biden administration had a nice bill that was going to help put monies at the border. It was going to also hire 12 extra judges and employees to help speed up the 2 years of backlog that they had so people could get their visas renewed and things of this sort. Guess what? Trump came into office, and guess what he did, people? He eliminated all those jobs. He eliminated those judges and kept that backlog on the book. So a kid like this who's 18 years old, his visa's expired, but he hasn't had his court date. So they said, okay, well, his visa's expired. We're going to send him back to his country. No, that's not right. That's not. This kid has due process. The system is backlogged. We're not dumb. And shame on Todd Lyons, because here's the hypocrisy here. Todd Lyons oversaw the Boston, Mass. ICE office. Tom Homan and Christy Noem brought him in. Why? Because their numbers were down. Tom Homan was about to lose his job. They brought the guy from Boston ICE to help them. How hypocritical of that is that? You bashed Massachusetts as one of the worst sanctuary states other than California. You had the Texas governor and Florida governor sending migrants to here to make us look bad and to force this situation on us. Yet you call Todd Lyons in to head your ICE. The hypocrisy of this that people don't understand is crazy. So now they snatched this kid up, and now you've flipped an entire community over to where it's like, okay, here's the problem, people, that people are and this is not just here in Milford. This is across the country. We're hearing these stories of people wrongfully being attacked in their cars. They smashed the window of a person in New Bedford and they had the wrong person. We had in Oklahoma a house that they raided at 2 a.m. and they had the wrong house. First and foremost, I'm hearing a lot of these ICE guys are guys that really couldn't cut it as police officers anyway, or federal agents. These guys are like the leftovers of who couldn't make it. That's what we're hearing. I think everybody here understands that we do have an immigration problem in this country. We're not taking it away. But what was sold to us by the MAGA people was that we were sending home criminals and threats to our society. That was it. But in the last 2 months, we've seen mothers with babies in their arms, families, and it's just sickening to the point where even the Bar Association has spoken out. We've had judges that Trump has appointed that are saying this is wrong. So I'm going to let R Squared step in here for Ken on this, because this is absolutely crazy. We have Marco Rubio now, who's changed his tune now. He wants to get the gentleman from El Salvador back now. Now he's changed his tune. This man was sent to El Salvador without due process. I understand he was, he had issues with his wife. He put his hands on his wife, but that was all being handled within the court systems, like it's supposed to be. So your thoughts right now on this? Now we're snatching up kids at schools, people in courts that are showing up for legit court dates. And I know Ken would have probably went full D's on this, but people are showing up for court dates on this, and they're getting taken away. So I'm going to turn it over to my attorney here. I'm going to let R Squared step in for Ken on this. This is crazy.
So first, the only good news about Ken not being here is I don't need my pillow for the next hour while he tries to explain the nuance of the law on this. But but I will say I will say a couple of things. First, let me caveat my comments. For those of you who read my stuff or hear me on the show, you'll know that I have always believed in enforcing our immigration laws. If you don't come to the country in accordance with the law, you don't get to stay. That is my position. It always has been. Doesn't matter. It's not about race. It's not about where you come from. You need to come in legally. You need to follow the rules. Now, that being said, as my caveat, there are a couple of things that are problematic. First of all, we're 50 years away. You know, our immigration laws are 50 years out of date. They're disgusting. And so I won't go into a lot of detail or else you'll get your pillow. But the fact of the matter is that, you know, our definition and our process for asylum is woefully out of date. Our process and definition for other forms of immigration, same problem. So that's shame on us, right? Because that's just updating numbers and procedures and things that Congress could do. You know, staffers could knock that out. They just have no will to do it. So what it gets us to is, number one, the American people, yes, did vote and have voted and do want immigration enforcement. They do not want the abuses of the Trump administration. And I agree with that statement. I agree with the majority of the American people. I am opposed, you know, to the abuses of the Trump administration. Just because many people, including myself, believe that we need to enforce our immigration laws, that doesn't mean we get to violate them ourselves. Just because people entered this country in violation of the immigration process doesn't mean that we get to violate their rights when we deal with it. The law, going back for many years and multiple Supreme Court cases, it's abundantly clear, is that these folks get due process. And I am offended and I highly object to the lack of due process. We talked about, you know, Abrego Garcia in El Salvador when I was on the show previously. And that's an example of that. And there are others. The fact of the matter is that I'm just going to say government, because it could be different agencies, right? So whichever agency is working on this, if they have labeled somebody as having entered the country illegally or their status has expired or what have you, then they are supposed to reach out to that person, provide them with whatever it is, their violation, give them notice of the violation, and they get a hearing where they can challenge the violation, whether or not let's say they didn't enter in violation. Let's say they can show that their visa is up to date. They have the right to a hearing. It's not a trial. It's not going to take days or weeks. It's an administrative hearing in front of an administrative judge. Ken has explained this on the show, as have I. It doesn't take that long. You could knock out lots of them in a day. There is a backlog, but it's not like full-blown trials. It's not like the Karen Reed trial or some of these other ones that take weeks and weeks. These things, you can do them in 5 minutes. Some of them maybe an hour. But the point is that we have these immigration courts, immigration judges, they're administrative judges, and they can, basically the government official, whoever's representing from the Department of Justice, will present, here's the evidence that they came into the country in violation of the law, or here's the evidence that their status is expired. And the defense can then say, okay, it is, but they can argue against deportation, or they can challenge the violation, whatever it is that they want to do. And then the administrative judge will decide whether the person gets to stay or whether they have to leave. Due process. We all get it. It's what makes us the great nation we are. It's what the Constitution requires. You can see it over my head. That's what it is. And so I don't know if 90% of these folks will be deported or 90% will get to stay, because I'm not an immigration judge and I don't get to review those cases. I trust that if we do this right, the administrative judges, who this is what they do for a living, and again, both sides, it's adversarial, will make sure that due process is served. And then we can live with the results. And whatever that is what it is. And there's an appellate process too, by the way. So even if you don't like what happened in front of the judge, you can appeal it. So it's not one and done. There's plenty of due process. And so, yes, we need to modify this. Congress needs to modify this. We need to, for example, did you know, listeners, that over 90% of those who file claims for asylum in the United States don't qualify for it? They do not. They're bogus claims. They don't meet the definition of asylum. Now, could we change the definition? We need to. We need to update it, not necessarily to make more of these claims viable, but because our process is outdated. But 90% of them don't. So you have all these people that say, oh, they're coming here to claim asylum. Well, 90% of them, they're bogus. They could come here for, asylum is only one way to come in. There are different ways to come to the United States. But everybody just says asylum, 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 like it's some magic thing. So I understand why there's an urgency to deny these things and to process people back, especially if they didn't come in lawfully, if they came in, without a proper checkpoint. So I totally get that. But the fact is, 90% of those claims are bogus in the first place. So I think that's something, we have to take that into account when we're looking at how to deal with it. Again, I'm disgusted by the abuses. That's not who we are as a people. It's not who we are as a country. It's not our law. We're the rule of law. The rule of law is paramount in our society. And so whatever we're going to do, we have to do it right. And we have to do it, under the name of justice, not anger, not politics, not racism, not whatever. That's wrong. That's not who we are as a people.
And Chris Gagny's in the chat. He says, why were the two governors not charged with human trafficking? Speaking about Abbott and DeSantis, which is funny because that was kind of what they did. They put these people on buses in the middle of the night and didn't tell them where they were sending them. And they ended up hearing about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. What they did was a violation, but because of the change of administration, the Trump DOJ dropped it. There were investigations into that. Oh,
shit.
There were.
I didn't know that. Oh, okay. I thought he was just kidding around. I thought he was making a joke.
No. He's, I don't know what would have happened. It's a very difficult thing to do, to bring cases like that against sitting governors and their staff. I don't know what would have happened. I don't even have a prediction on that. But there was a process by which they were investigating that to determine, what laws were violated and what to do about it. But of course, the Trump DOJ dismissed all that.
Right, because I remember them saying that these people were supposed to be legally told where they were being sent to, and they weren't. They were denied that whole process. So
right, they were sent under false pretenses.
Yeah, I think you mentioned that on this show. I think we had that discussion on this show. So, yeah, it's a crazy situation. I'm not happy at the fact that, Todd Lyons is now kind of a yes man for ICE right now to save Holman's job. For people who didn't know, they're talking about the fact that they arrested 1,500. The whole proof of the pudding here is right now is that if it wasn't for them snatching up regular people off the street, their numbers weren't cutting it. Their numbers were below the daily average that was the same as the Biden administration, except it was costing a shitload more money because they were using military to transport these people, which was costing a ton more money.
Here's the real problem, right? So, during the campaign, Trump and his allies were always talking about getting rid of the criminals. Okay, most Americans would say, yes, if we have people who came here in violation of the law and are committing violent crime, of course we don't want them. Most people would be okay with that. The problem is this. Every time they get asked questions, they keep saying, we're getting rid of the criminals and we have a right to do that and to protect the nation. Yes, except the people you're rounding up and deporting, there's no evidence of them being criminals.
Right.
You can't just make it up. And that's what they're doing. They're lying. And that's why they're getting in trouble. No court decision has ever said that the president or the administration doesn't have the power to do this. But they have to provide evidence. You can't just label somebody a criminal. They have to be one.
We spoke on this because we had a DOJ attorney who refused to lie in court when they said to provide the information, provide the evidence for Abrego Garcia. They wanted him to provide, and he says, I don't have it. I wasn't given it, and I'm not going to lie. And they turned around, Christy Noem and them, they suspended this guy without pay. I don't even think he's still.
They fired him.
They fired him. Correct. Yep. And you said he did you said it on this show the last time you said he did the right thing because that's your career. At the end of the day, you're not supposed to be going into court and lying for this administration because you have to answer for it. It's your body, and that's why we spoke on this. This is why the ABA has been so instrumental and been very vocal in this whole process. The ABA, Justice Roberts, who has done a complete shift. Justice Roberts has been very vocal about this Trump administration. He's lost a great majority of this SCOTUS right now. It's been very interesting to see where this is going to lead. It's crazy. I'm sitting here shaking my head. We got about 4 minutes left. But it's just crazy times. A lot of things are tied up in court. We're wasting a lot of time in court cases. He hasn't won any cases. A lot of judges are shutting him down. He's losing cases left and right. About the same as it was with the stolen election cases. Pretty much over. The problem here, people, is that this time around, he's raising a shitload of money to help push his agenda, and that's the scary part. But in this whole thing here, and I talked about the DOD, I talked about Todd Lyons. You see here Todd Lyons defending this arrest of this 18-year-old student. We're seeing more and more communities and towns come together and speak up. We're seeing a lot of these videos of town meetings going awry. Please, what are your thoughts on these town meetings, taking people out of the town meetings? I see a big debate over that too. Town meetings are supposed to be to allow constituents to confront and speak with that person that they elected. A lot of these Republicans now are hiring extra police details or private security when people get up there. And of course, for me, I got to put my head. If I'm a Republican and I'm a MAGA guy, I realize, okay, I'm going to be torn apart by my constituents who are not happy right now. For me, I feel like I would have to suck it up and allow them to speak and tear me apart and let myself give them. I've seen some videos where they're not allowing people to answer and they're having cops take people out. And these people are very emotional. And I want to hear your thoughts on that, because, you know, you fought for people to have this right to be able to speak in the.
Yeah, you know, it's a difficult situation because on the one hand, people are there to exercise their First Amendment rights, and challenging your political leaders is the essence of the First Amendment. And they have the right to ask challenging questions. They have the right to offer their opinions. They have the right to do a lot of things. However, free speech does not include criminal activity. And if you become disorderly, then it is the responsibility of law enforcement to escort you out. Now, some of these people may not be violent, but once you become disorderly, you pose a threat because they don't know your intentions. And then if that spreads, then you have a problem because you have an elected official in a room full of people becoming hostile. And, you know, if they're just getting shouted down, then that's what they deserve by their constituents. But law enforcement doesn't know that. They have to handle the situation in accordance with their standard procedures and the threat assessment. And when you get a crowd that starts losing control, you have to eliminate that threat. So I see it from both sides. I love seeing people stand up to their elected leaders and calling them out for the BS that they're spewing from those podiums. I think that's the right thing to do, but you can't lose your composure, because once you become disorderly, they probably will escort you out, just because that's the only way to keep everybody safe. So just don't cross the line.
Yeah, I've seen some where I question them being taken out, and then I've seen some where once you start dropping the F-bomb and things of that sort, I'm sorry, that's disorderly. You can't be, and I get it. Some of these people are emotionals. I saw one where this whole town is pretty much going to be dead because of some of these policies that have now been in place. But it's a tough situation. But I'm glad to see people showing up at these town meetings. I do love seeing the fact that the people are showing up and asking these questions. Also in the legal booth, we talked on this show about this case. This is a totally different legal booth situation. This is Sig Sauer up in New Hampshire. As you guys know, the Sig Sauer P320 firearm. We talked about this on the show. Squid and Ken gave their opinions on it. For those who didn't know, the P320 has been given to certain officials, police officers, federal officers, and people carry this firearm. They had this issue where this gun is discharging on its own. Now, I forget if it was Ken or if it was you who said the problem here with SIG was that they acknowledged they had a problem and had a recall. And because they had the recall and brought them all back and tried to fix them and then put them back out in there, and now you're still having more problems. I believe it was either you or Ken had said that that's where the problem begins, because they admitted that they had a problem with the firearm. And then they tried to repair it and put it back out. Now we have more accidental discharges. Thankfully, thank God, nobody has been lost their life, but the number is now high. SIG has asked for immunity from the New Hampshire lawmakers who are overseeing this case. They have been granted immunity right now. Just kind of what your thought and opinion is on this and where this could be headed.
Yeah, it's a mistake to give Sig Sauer immunity, because here's the thing. This is a basic civil liability case. It's called product liability. Every week, you see various companies doing recalls. Car companies do recalls because something doesn't work properly, and when they find that out, they have to recall it and fix it, and then send the cars back to the owner being safe. You've got products with toys, with furniture, with food. Every week there are recalls, and if there's negligence on the company that produces that item, then they can be sued. If there's not, then then there simply isn't a case. Now, once they become aware of the problem, the defect, they have an obligation to notify people and to try to fix it. And so with SIG, if they didn't know about the defect, then that's one thing. You'd have to show a certain amount of negligence in the design, but they did know about it. They did know, and they acknowledged that they knew because they did a recall and they tried to fix it. So at that point, if they fix it and send it out, no problem. If they send it out and it's not fixed, then they're definitely still liable under a civil law situation, lawsuit. So there should be a class action lawsuit by all the people who have been, injured by that defect, known to SIG after they became aware of it. I can't say what would happen in that case. You're going to have a whole bunch of expert witnesses on both sides, but that case should be allowed to go to court. That is unconscionable that they would give immunity to this one manufacturer for a product liability case. It just doesn't make sense.
Wow. So by being granted immunity, that means they can't take out the class action lawsuit against SIG?
They would be immune from any lawsuit, class or individual.
Wow, that's huge. So that's why this story is really big right now. SIG brings a lot of business to New Hampshire. That I saw what they bring to that state, and I can understand why people are upset that they've been granted immunity. So that's, wow, now that you explain it, I get it, I understand it, and I see the bigger picture. So, wow, crazy stuff. Let's get into, we're at 8 o'clock, let's get into Trump troubles real quick. In the Trump troubles, guys, this is going to be a Netflix movie, pay attention. For the last year and a half, the Ukraine has put together this plot. If you guys know these trailers, these trailer cubes and things of that sort that we have here that you rent, for a year and a half, Ukraine has been putting drones with missiles. There's up to 112 drones to carry out this mission. And what they did was they had a secret compartment in these trailers that were going to Russia and being placed in these strategic places near the main Russian airfield. This is ingenious because a year and a half has passed and it was time to put their Operation Spiderweb attack. The Ukrainians deployed 112 drones to this Russian airfield and they destroyed 1/3 of the Russian airfield and their planes. This was super. I gotta let R-Squared, you're a military guy. Ukraine is the underdog. They're the underdogs in this. And here we see an operation like this pulled off by the Ukrainians shortly after Trump realizes that Putin is a nutcase, which if he had people instead of yes men, he would have listened to people he talked about, have told him, hey, Putin's an asshole. This is the type of guy. Your thoughts on this mission that was carried out successfully?
Yeah, first of all, it was brilliant. There's no doubt about that. It took an immense amount of planning. And by the way, they had to find Russian sympathizers in the beginning of this thing, even to be able to pull it off.
That's true.
So this was really quite a thing. Part of me says I wish they had done more. Right? They got at least 1/3 of the strategic bomber force. They pulled this off at 3 different airfields that had the Russian strategic bombers. I almost wish they had done more, like 2/3, right? This could have crippled the Russian Air Force because right now, Russia still has the edge. They're still the bigger country with more resources. And Russia knows that Ukraine doesn't have U.S. backing. As long as the Trump administration is calling the shots, Russia can do whatever it wants. And so on the one hand, I think this was great. And I think that Russia, was caught unprepared and they're going to be reeling from this. On the other hand, I'm not sure I even want to know what Putin's going to do in retaliation to it, because he knows he's going to have a green light from Washington to do it. And that's the sad part. His retaliation for this.
Today, the Ukraine, they actually did follow up. The Ukraine actually took out the support on one of the major Russian bridges today. What they did was they had guys underwater. They placed bombs. So now this bridge can't be traveled on. So it was kind of a 1-2 attack. And you said it correctly. Putin is definitely pissed about this. I'm sure Trump got that call. But the problem is that Trump was already saying that he was upset with Putin because Putin carried out this Easter attack after saying he was going to sign into a ceasefire deal and killed all these people. So
here's the thing. What Ukraine did was completely lawful under international law.
Right.
It was a great move. Audacious, successful, effective, legal. What Russia has been doing is the opposite. Russia has been specifically targeting civilians and protected places, murdering, raping, torturing men, women, children, destroying homes, hospitals, schools. These are all things that Russia is specifically targeting. They're not incidental. They're specifically targeting. Those are gross violations of international law. That's the difference. And that's why when Russia started doing that, I said that should signal all limitations on Ukraine come off. Because at first, the United States and NATO were saying, hey, we don't want you to strike inside Russia, or we don't want you to do certain things because of fear of escalation. But once the Russians escalated and they started raping and murdering Ukrainian citizens, then the retaliation to that is, okay, Russia, if you're going to do that, then we're going to let Ukraine do whatever it wants in response to you, to fight this war. The other thing, the other day, both sides kind of released what they wanted out of the ceasefire negotiation. Did you see that yesterday in the news?
Yes.
Maybe?
Yep.
So, what does Ukraine want? They want the kidnapped children back. The thousands and thousands of Ukrainian children that Russia kidnapped and stole from their parents. They want those kids back. That seems very legitimate to me. What does Russia want? They want all of Ukraine's territory. I mean, it's you can't make this up. I mean, Russia is just.
It's crazy. Like I said, this is going to be a movie. We're going to see this, and I applaud Zelensky for this attack. It was great stuff. Also, in the Trump troubles, if you guys haven't seen it yet, I was talking to Rob off air about it, but if you haven't seen yet, Pete Hegseth has started putting up his recruitment videos for the military. I want people to go and just look at these videos. For me, I felt they were disgusting. They put the, typical military recruitment videos. They put the Hollywood type spin on it. But for me, it's what's being said in these. They talk about gender stuff. I want people to just go to the DOD on YouTube page and check out these videos that they have for getting people to sign up for the military. And there's some things that spoke volumes to me that I want people to notice themselves. But when you look at these military recruitment videos, things like women are missing from these videos. We've had an army that's had women in all races represented in these videos. When I looked at these videos, I saw the absence of women. I saw the absence of a lot of things in the recruitment videos. And then there's the words that are being said in these videos. They're promoting a scare agenda for people to sign up to the military because we've been viewed as this soft or whatever. I just want people to go and look at it for themselves. There's like 3 or 4 videos out there that Pete has put out there, and I'm not happy with it. So please do check it out, Rob, when you get a chance. Thoughts on that chat? Also, hey, the honeymoon's over. I said this was coming. Musk is out. His time is done. This guy wasted no time coming after President Trump. The big, beautiful bill, he called it an abomination, a disgusting abomination. Musk has come out and said that any Republican who signed off on this at 12:30 a.m. in the morning is a disgrace. Musk is singing a whole different tune right now. Why? Because he's out of the Trump administration. And guess what? He's back at Tesla, where he's got board members who aren't happy with the fact that their stocks have been destroyed for the last so many months, to the point where I'm pretty sure they were thinking about buying Musk out, because he is now saying that he spent way too much money on this election. He's now pulling back money. He showed up in the Oval Office there with a black eye that he claims his son gave him, which speaks different volumes all the way around. But we saw this. We predicted it on this show. We said that this is two ego guys and this is going to end badly. We saw this coming on this show. We talked about it. It does not surprise me at the fact that they're now throwing Musk under the bus. Trump it came out and pretty much they said that Doge didn't find anything that it was supposed to find, so they're now throwing Doge under the bus, which we said there was nothing found. This was all scare tactics. They fired a lot of good veterans. A lot of good leaders were cut. Your thoughts on now this honeymoon coming to an end?
Well, remember what I said. There's always some amount of waste in various government agencies, but you can't just go in there and start cutting people. You have to have the agency determine how it's going to absorb the missions of the people. In other words, you say you have to cut 1%, 5%, whatever the number is going to be. You let the agency determine how to best do that. Maybe you need to get rid of middle management. Maybe you need to get rid of new people. Maybe you need to offer early retirement or some combination of things. Maybe out of the 10 functions that you perform, maybe one of them is the least important and you can eliminate the function. But the question is, how do you absorb these things? So none of that went into the whole Doge process. They just went in there with the damn chainsaw, like you saw, the proverbial chainsaw. And, with people who had no government experience, no qualifications, no security clearances, no valid access, just went in and just started chopping people. I mean, there was no way that was ever going to work. It has to be done deliberately. I'm not saying don't do it, but you have to do it deliberately. What they did didn't save us any money. In fact, it cost money. If you look at the charts, if you look at the actual data, you will see that not only did Doge not save us any money, it cost us money. The government had to spend money because of wrongful terminations, because of replacing people. So, I don't know why they thought this was a good idea. It sounded good, but this is what happens when you bring in people that don't know anything about the running of a government. I don't just mean Doge, I mean the entire Trump administration. They brought in a bunch of sycophants who don't know anything about government, who have no integrity, and that don't care at all about the country. And so it was destined for failure, as is everything else. So, were Trump and Musk going to get along for the entire term? Of course not, because Musk knows he's the real president. He bought the election for Trump. We talked about this on the show, the amount of money he gave to bail out Trump's campaign. And he gave a lot of money we don't know about, right? Because you can do that. Mm-hmm. So Musk knows that he's really in charge. And then when Trump stopped giving him his due, bye.
You know what? It's going to be, At Night Live has been killing it. But here's the other thing, too, before we close out the show, this last piece here. I want to share this post, too. And this is the danger of our president. I hear people saying he can post whatever. When you're the president, you shouldn't speak a certain way and you shouldn't share certain things. Truth Social, I get it. That's Donald Trump's website. I get it. But again, you're the president. You don't share crazy conspiracy theories where you claim that Joe Biden was actually executed in 2020 and that the Joe Biden that we see now is a double or robot engineered.
Just ridiculous.
And says Democrats don't know that. This is just sheer. This is what bothers me. For 4 years, we had to listen to people talk about sleepy Joe Biden. We had to talk about this and that. And yet, this guy has done 3 times as much worse. We've got videos of him sleeping. I saw a statistic that this guy, in his 100 days of office, he has played 37 days of golf out of the 100. 37. And then they put the price tag on what it costs to protect a twice attempted. So people seem to forget that this guy has had attempts on his life more than once now. So now this guy has to have more security than the normal president because he's had more attempts on his life. So these golfing trips that everybody says, well, he's allowed to do that. Oh, guess what, taxpayers? You're paying for it. You're paying for all these trips. You're paying for all these elaborate flyovers at events like NASCAR. You know, he decided not to. He did the right thing. He didn't go to the Indy 500, but my opinion is he didn't go to the Indy 500 because he knows he didn't want to have to show up at the NBA Finals. That was my opinion. I think that was all strategic, and that's why he blew off the Indy 500. Because he knew if he went to the Indy 500, he was going to have to go to the NBA Finals, and if he blew that off, then that whole race topic would come up, especially after bringing South Africans in here on asylum as refugees, as R-Squared just broke down, people abusing the asylum word here. You know, it's crazy. It's crazy. So, you know, this is what he shared on Truth Social. This is unprofessional. I watch a lot of C-SPAN because you're getting it from the horse's mouth. And ever since this whole thing with Zelensky, every president who has come here and visited the White House, every president has I've seen how bad we are as a country. Just horrible. They brought in the South African president, came in here to discuss with this whole thing about bringing and he was just, they were laughing in the face of Donald Trump as Donald Trump handed them false propaganda that his press conference, I don't know if you were able to see that, they bring up, and then he shows them a propaganda video that wasn't, and you know, I tell people, don't just watch the president, watch the presidents of these countries' team and their faces, because it's just, a picture is worth 1,000 words. It's just a disgrace. And for people who say that this country is that the world is respecting us as a whole, no, they're not. You're completely lost. When the Pope passed away and the new Pope was named, weren't revered. Weren't revered at all. We're the joke. We're the laughing stock of the world right now, politically. Crazy stuff. So before we get out of here, Squid, your thoughts on this crazy sharing of false information? When do you? Well, nobody can reel him in because everybody he's put in place are yes people. So nobody. And
yeah. It's nothing new. It's who he always has been. It's certainly what he did in the first term. He's doing it more now because, like you say, there's nobody to reel him in. There are no babysitters for him anymore. It's awful, right? I mean, he confronted the South African president with information. Most of what he showed him wasn't even South Africa; it was other places. So that's not helpful. And then some of the, and then there's also zero evidence of any kind of. What did they say, that there was an attempt to steal the land from the white farmers? There are certainly white farmers or white citizens who have been victims of crime. That's true. So have blacks, right? I mean, race, crime doesn't necessarily always know race. And so there is no systemic thing to deny the white citizens of South Africa their rights to land ownership. It doesn't exist. It's nonsense.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And Donald Trump wants to play that game because that just fits his narrative. It fits Project 2025.
Yeah, and he's going back and forth with Canada. He met up with the Canadian president again, and he threw out there, well, you could become that 51st state, and the Canada president is, we're not becoming the 51st state. You can just stop it. We're going back and forth with China on these tariffs, and these tariffs, you make a tariff and then the stock market bombs, and then you come back and you pull back on these tariffs and you look like a fool. That people don't realize that costs taxpayers money too, because you put these tariffs in place and then you kill the stock market for a day and then you pull them back, and then you create, my son is in a business where your orders and things are based off of companies that deal with the stock market. So you've got this going back and forth. It's crazy. So we just need to get. Hey, everybody, thank you for tuning in to the show. Those are the hats and the beanies and the people who supported this show. We're hoping Ken Diesel is okay. It's unlike Ken to not just know usually will tell us if or whatever, something. So hopefully everything's okay with Ken. Hopefully we'll hear from him in our chat. These are the hats and things that we provide. These are the shows that I produce. Drafting the Circuits is on Wednesday night. Oscar Mike Radio co-produced on Thursday nights. Turnbuckles and Spilt Liquor, we're on at 9:30 tonight. Homeland Hero Salute and Fubar Studios. You Are the Star karaoke first Friday. We will not be at Brockton Beer on first Friday. We're actually going to be later this month. July 4th falls on the Friday, so we're going to be later this month. Open for lunch and dinner. Kids eat free on Mondays and Wednesdays. We also have the Brockton Police Cadet Program. They're recruiting now. So from the ages of 18 to 22 years of age, 5 years of residency in Brockton. You can go down and sign up to become a Brockton Police Cadet. Emerge Career, if you have been formerly incarcerated but all your cases are cleared up, you can join Emerge Career and they'll try to get you your CDL. Journey Church in Kentucky is on Thursdays 3 to 6, Sundays at 10:30. If you need food, please head down there and get fresh bread, vegetables, or fruit. Sunday Wake and Bake program at the NAP from 10 to 1. Lionel Young Fitness, Stay Young Fitness. That's on Saturdays. Make sure to reach out and check him out. And then, hey, we got 3 more days left. Jimmy Fun Scooper Bowl. You go down there, you pay one price. You eat all the ice cream you want at City Hall. This is a big fundraiser every year. Brockton High has a instrument drive. If you've got a instrument that you'd like to donate, June 9th and June 11th, 9 to 11, 3 to 5. You can go down to the Fine Arts and donate any type of equipment, musical equipment. Juneteenth is coming up, June 14th, 12 to 6, Brockton Fairgrounds. Yana Marie will be performing there. Free Warrior Yoga for veterans and first responders on Wednesdays. And all buses are free on June 30th. And then, once again, if you are a politician and you're running, Mini Mechanic Summer Program. If you want to learn, send your kid to learn how to be a mechanic, 6-week program that's coming up. You can register now. And then we've got Moses Rodriguez is rescheduling. He's going to come back on this show. He was involved in a car accident, so he is running for mayor. But until he heals up and gets better, we had to reschedule him coming on the show. And then we have Ward 7, Jamal Brathwaite. He's running. He sent me his banner. And then see who else sent me a banner. He's running for mayor. So there's Mayor Rodriguez, Jamal Brathwaite, and then Jean Bradley Durancourt. He's also running for mayor. So these guys are getting their stuff in. If you're running for any type of seat or office, please make sure to get them to me. We're getting ready to get out of here. We are at 8:24. I'm going to let R Squared say his goodbyes. Get out of here.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in. Hope you found the show informative, and look forward to next time.
Yeah, thank you for everybody for tuning in the show. Turnbuckles and Spilt Liquor is coming up. Hopefully, once again, like I said, I hope our Ken is okay. And then we're going to get ready to get out of here. SpongeBob, do me a favor. Take us home.
See you next Tuesday.
Thank you for listening to The Booth on Hoobazoo and HatcherRadio.com. Please follow the Facebook page and subscribe to the podcast at Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. The Booth is a Sinister One production hosted by Sinister One.
I've got to start hanging out with friends that are a little more intelligent and understand politics and stuff. It's just that I'm up on this level up here, and all my friends are down here. Me, nah. You guys, nah. Maybe a little more down in here. Screw you guys, I'm going home.
I smoke, I drink, I do my thing. These bitches hating, so you know I got to make it plain. Don't do cocaine with your chick, my main. We stick together, true forever, yeah, you know we bang. I miss those days, which was easy. If only I make it, bitch, don't repeat. Now that I done upgraded, I've been upstate, but y'all think I'm playing. And I got a hit now for these weak assholes who think I ain't slaying. Try me, and I'll probably end up laughing, cause I never back down. I'm that chick with a clean ass whip, I don't need that shit, I got my own now. I get hurt, I get tired of fussing, fighting, guess I gotta crack down. Don't mess with me, cause on everything, I'ma have to bring the whole city out.
WHOOBAZOO, that's whobazoo.com.
Enter website, enter website, enter website, enter website.